So the death of the firstborn is the last straw for Pharaoh, and he finally says, fine, you Israelites can leave, get out of here. The Israelites make their escape. There's tons of them. I believe that the Bible says 600,000 men, and that's a lot, because that's not counting women and children and livestock and things like that. But the people of God are allowed to leave. Once they get a ways down the road, Yahweh says, could you please turn back? Could you turn back around? And in this way, we're going to lure Pharaoh out and defeat Pharaoh once and for all. So there are a couple of things to go over from your reading in the Exodus. Number one, your translation of the Bible probably says Red Sea. Lots of translations say Red Sea, and that is because the Greek, the LXX or the Septuagint says Red Sea. It was a known body of water. What the Hebrew says is Yam Suf, and that means Reed Sea. So we're really not sure what exact body of water this happened at. It may have been the Red Sea. It may not have been. Hard telling, not knowing. But here is perhaps the most miraculous deliverance in the history of the Old Testament. It is this deliverance that the Israelites look back upon again and again and again as this formative experience when God showed up in a big way and released them from slavery. It is really amazing. The Israelites are delivered. The Egyptians, the cat civilization, the superpower, they are defeated. This is really a moment for rejoicing. And it's a moment in which God makes a way out of no way, because when God tells the Israelites to circle back, the Pharaoh decides that he is going to go on the attack and try to get them back. He decides, no, I don't think I really do want to let them go free. And so Pharaoh comes after them, and they find themselves pinned against the Red Sea or the Reed Sea or this body of water while Pharaoh is approaching. And one of the best depictions that I've ever seen of this is, of course, from the Prince of Egypt. And so I like to show this in my in-person classes, and you can feel free to either skip over it or watch it. It's just really good. So here it is. I'll try to make myself even smaller. Oh no, this video isn't allowed. Well, I apologize. You can't watch it, but I do encourage you to go and Google a YouTube video of the parting of the Red Sea in the Prince of Egypt and watch it, because it really is this miraculous deliverance. The people of God are pinned up against this body of water. There's no way out. And Moses raises his staff above his head and the waters part. And this is such a miraculous thing because it is a reenactment of creation. When God parted the waters and parted the waters at creation, God is reenacting that as an action of deliverance for the people of God. Really, really cool, really fun. I hope you get to watch a YouTube video. I'm going to try to find it and post it on Blackboard for you just so that you can see it, since this one didn't work. One of the other things that I do want to point out to you is that after the people of God have moved through the Red Sea, the Reed Sea, whatever it might be, God opens the way for them. They go through, and the waves come crashing down as Pharaoh's army comes after them. And in this way, Pharaoh's army is defeated by Yahweh. The people have to walk faithfully through, but Yahweh is the one that defeats the Egyptians once and for all. Another thing that I want to quickly point out to you is that in Exodus 12, it mentions that the people who leave Egypt are a mixed multitude, which means not only the slaves leave according to the narrative, not only the Israelites, but also some Egyptians. That's just an interesting little tidbit for you when we start to talk about whether or not the Israelites should be intermarrying, whether or not they should be mixing with other people groups. But this is just fascinating to me that in Exodus 12, it mentions that some Egyptians see the mighty power of God and they leave along with the Israelites. So the Israelites have made it through the Red Sea or the Reed Sea, and Miriam, Moses' sister, the prophet, leads them all in rejoicing in the power of God. What a wonderful scene that is painted in the Bible of people crying out to God and thanking God for deliverance. Well, wonderful scene indeed, lots of fun. Now we have to kind of turn a page and start talking about the world behind the text, which I'm sure you are all anxious to do. Now, just like we've talked about before, when we talked about the Enuma Elish, when we talked about the creation narrative, we said that there's an ancient Babylonian narrative that is really similar to it, similar and different. Then we talked about the Noah narrative, and I mentioned to you briefly, but I kind of relied on the fact that you'd read about it in Vanstra. We talked about the fact that Noah is yet another one of those figures that has an ancient Near Eastern or Babylonian counterpart. So what seems likely is that the people of God, while they're living in exile, this is the world behind the text, while they're living in exile, they're hearing these stories, they're hearing the Enuma Elish, they're hearing stories of Atrahasis, and they're weaving elements of those stories into their own story. Moses is not different. So we have this story of Sargon. He is an ancient Mesopotamian warlord and king, and his story of origins is really similar to the story of Moses. When you read about Sargon, it says, "My mother conceived me in secret. She gave birth to me in concealment. She set me in a basket of rushes. She sealed the lid with tar, and she cast me into the river. But it did not rise over me. The water carried me to Aki, the drawer of water. He lifted me out as he dipped his jar into the river." So Sargon, this seems like it is maybe a Mesopotamian motif to have a hero being set adrift in a basket and being miraculously saved. The difficulty with this, I've often had students ask me, well, is it possible that Sargon, the story of Sargon, is just based on the story of Moses? Like the relationship goes the other way around, rather than the story of Moses being based on Sargon? And that's an excellent question. It's not actually possible that Sargon is based on Moses, because the story of Sargon predates the story of Moses by about 2,000 years. And so we do know that the story of Sargon came first, and it's possible that both of them were set adrift in a basket. Maybe that's where Jochebed got the idea. But the more likely scenario is that this story of Moses is a story that's meant to communicate something that's true about God that may not be historically factual. And the reason that we have this story of Moses being set adrift in a basket is to show how awesome Moses was. He was set adrift in a basket just like Sargon was. So kind of a cool thing about Moses. Also I have this. So don't let your worries get the best of you. Remember, Moses started out as a basket case. So if you're feeling like a basket case, you have Moses to look to, you have Sargon to look to. You shouldn't feel too badly about yourself at all. That's a little bit of the world behind the text. Now we need to get into this question. A lot of times when I talk about the Exodus, I have students that want to know, did the Exodus actually happen? Do we have historical or archaeological evidence that it actually happened? And the answer is no. Even though you may be able to go onto the internet and Google something about chariot wheels that have been found in the bottom of the Red Sea, or you may be able to find something about some archaeologist that says that they found evidence of a huge exodus of people out of Egypt around the right time. There's just, if there was enough evidence to support that, then it would be much more widespread, and more folks would know about it. There's just not really, if ever you're flipping through and you come to the History Channel and they're like, oh, the Exodus, did it actually happen? Well, they're going to have tidbits on either side, but we just don't have enough hard evidence to prove that the Exodus actually happened. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is think about the Exodus, the biblical account of the Exodus as a reflection of, but a transformation of, an actual historical event. So I'm going to let that hang there for a second, and then I'm going to come back to you and kind of fill in some of this.